Well, welcome to the Global Gurus podcast. I think we're on episode 5 or 6. It's hard to remember, but this is a show, a 15-minute conversation with thinkers shaping the future of leadership and business. And every episode, we ask our guests 3 questions. What's the biggest problem you see right now? What's the original methodology you've built to solve it? And finally, how are you applying it to create measurable results in the real world? I'm Rhett Power. My co-host is Mark Nation today. Mark, great to have you. Great to be with you again. And we have Michelle Johnston, the Michelle Johnston, and her book is The Seismic Shift, and she's got another new book out. I imagine she wants to talk about it a little bit. And hey, let's get to it. Mark?
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks so much. So we know you're recognized as one of the top 30 leaders in the world in communications and connection specifically. And so we'd love to hear more about what you see as some of the biggest challenges that or problems that people face across your client base as it relates to communications or anything.
Absolutely. Well, thanks to you two. You're seriously 2 of my favorite men in the coaching world. You two are just, I love that the positive differences and the impacts that both of you all are making. So thank you. Thank you for having me on the Global Gurus podcast. And yes, I just launched book number 2, The Seismic Shift in You, co-authored with Marshall Goldsmith. And it's the 7 necessary shifts to create connection and drive results. We just launched it right before Christmas. And so I'm still on my media tour, having an absolute blast. So to answer your question, Mark, what are the challenges that we're seeing? Well, we are in an era of complete disconnection, and it's killing us. It is the equivalent of smoking 16 cigarettes a day. And when I saw Dr. Vivek Murthy talk about this recently, I said, how is that possible? He said, well, here's what's happening. He said, just in 2025, 1 in 5 of us globally are feeling isolated, depressed, anxious, and disconnected from each other. And so what's happening is if you have 1 in 5 of us feeling those feelings, then it is contributing to early premature deaths. And he said it's the equivalent of smoking 16 cigarettes a day. It's increasing heart attacks by 32% and increasing strokes by 33%. So y'all, we have a serious problem, and the workplace is not working for us anymore. In this remote environment, people are just struggling. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing right now, is how do we operate in these hybrid remote environments, trying to get people motivated, trying to make sure that people are productive. And yet now we know the research that they're withering on the vines.
You just scared the you know what out of me. That sounds awful. And I know you're working on, how do you, you've been working on this methodology for a while. Talk about that methodology and talk about, your solution to this problem, because I think as business owners, you and I go to a lot of conferences, and, just last week I was in San Francisco, and it was all about speed and speed and speed. And you've got to do things or else. And that adds to the stress too. When you put that on your people, right? This speed and everything is ambiguous now. We don't know what tomorrow looks like. So add that on top of the loneliness that you're talking about, and it just seems like a formula for disaster. So talk about your methodology on how we can solve this.
Yeah. So speaking of formulas, so when Marshall Goldsmith and I decided to write this book, we were in London at the Thinkers 50 Awards in 2023. And we had just witnessed, observed, watched some of the greatest thinkers in the world talk about what some of the seismic shifts are. And they were talking exactly what you were referring to, Rhett. They were talking about the rapid pace of technology, AI and how in the world it's going to affect leaders and how we as coaches can help them. And each and every one of these top thinkers in the world said that in order to differentiate and be effective as leaders, we must lean in with our heart and our humanity. That is the only way we're going to differentiate ourselves with technology. We have to show up more human. So I looked at Marshall and I said, this is the biggest seismic shift, and we need to write a book about it. And we need to share with leaders exactly the practical tips that they need to take in order to lean in with more heart and humanity. So the methodology and the formula that we came up with are the 7 seismic shifts. And going back to Rhett, what you were just referring to when you were out in California, the speed, the fast pace. So the first shift that we believe that we all as coaches and as leaders must take is the shift from what to who. The shift from what to who is so necessary. So one of the CEOs that I coach, Pete November, he's the CEO of Ochsner Health, our largest employer in the state of Louisiana. And in one particular coaching session, I said, Pete, you just seem so at peace, and with the big, beautiful bill going on and so much pressure and the margins are so small. How are you at such peace? And she said, Michelle, I have finally figured out how to shift from what to who. He said, I used to wake up every morning looking at my calendar and it was just task. And now I wake up and I think, who do I get to work with today? Who do I get to interact with? Who do I get to inspire? Who do I get to encourage? And he said, that shift has changed everything. So the shift number 1 is shift in perspective, from what to who. The shift number 2 is shift in priorities. And here's what I think you all will really appreciate. When I was writing this chapter, I honestly thought that Marshall and I were writing about, in order to be really great with connection, you've got to shift your priorities to focus on everyone and everything. Nope, it's the exact opposite. I learned the hard way. My daughter came home on Christmas break as I'm writing this chapter, and she said, Mom, I've been home for 2 weeks and I've barely seen you. Aren't you the expert connection? I mean, talk about a punch, right? And I said, my gosh, yes. And I completely forgot to adjust my calendar to the fact that you're home from college for Christmas. Need to rework that calendar, right? And so what we realized in that moment is I had been saying yes to everyone and everything, thinking that's what you did as somebody who studies connection. And all that ended up doing is putting me last, which made my most important priority in my life last, which is my daughter. So that whole chapter was reoriented with Marshall and I realizing that the shift in priorities is to you, because the most important who is you. And if you are not anywhere on your calendar, that means that the most important people in your life are not anywhere on the calendar.
Wow. That's something to talk about right there.
Yes.
So good. So good. What are some of the other shifts that you talk about in your frameworks?
Yes. So shift 3 then is, once you figure out your shift in priorities, that in order to be a successful human, you have to prioritize yourself. The most important who is you. Then number 3 shift is shift to calendar. So I often ask my leaders, and this is why NBC News keeps asking me to fly back up to New York and continue to be on with Kate Snow, because I asked her to pick up her telephone on live TV. And I said, show me your calendar and I will show you your priorities. And she looked at her calendar. She goes, I'm horrified. Because what I say, my priorities are my relationships. They're nowhere on my calendar. So let's talk about this. So once you realize that you have to prioritize yourself first in order then to prioritize others, then you want to make sure that your calendar reflects the most important people in your life. Because, y'all, a big, gigantic shift in the world is we can't operate like we did when there was a professional Michelle and a personal Michelle, a professional calendar for Michelle and a personal calendar. We now realize that in this crazy, fast-paced world we live with technology, there's one Michelle, there's one calendar, there's one day to make a difference, there's one opportunity. So show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. And it might make you really uncomfortable. which leads to the number 4 shift. Most people, when they look at their calendars, all you see are meetings, 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 meetings. That's the way that our world operates now, virtual meeting after virtual meeting. Number 4 shift is we have to shift our meetings so that they encourage conversation and discussion. And it's not just one way talking at. I'm so tired of showing up in meetings where people think, oh, I'm in charge of the agenda. Hey, everybody, thanks for attending this meeting. I'm going to talk at you. Those days are over. We have to shift the way we show up for meetings. We have to encourage people to use breakout rooms for conversation. I want everybody to begin the meeting with a connection question, which shows that you care about the who, the people in the room, and not just the what. So we've got all of these shifts. We have to shift in order to focus on connection. And I know that's probably going to be your next question. And so I'll wait for you to ask it.
Well, I think really the question is then how do you tell this story? I mean, how do you create the measurable results that is the real question in the real world? And how do you get this message out? Because with all the spin, with all the things that we're so focused on, I know this seems easy, but I know it's hard, right? As Marshall likes to say, it seems simple, but it's hard. How do you do that? How do you get companies and how do you get people to understand this and then try to do something with this information and this book? How do you get them to sort of implement it?
Yeah, so I think what will get people's attention is better connection does equal better financial performance. So I even published an article that showed that if you're a leader who creates a positive environment where your people feel listened to, and so the definition of connection is, do your people feel seen, heard, valued, respected, appreciated? And what's wild about those 5 dimensions is I think you had Chester Elton on your podcast, what is he, the something of gratitude, he's got all these fantastic titles, the Apostle of Appreciation. In any case, in Chester's research, he has found that you really can't say thank you enough because a lot of people won't show their gratitude because they don't want to create a soft environment. And his research dispels that. That's a myth. And what we're finding is if you're a leader who listens to your employee and says thank you and celebrates wins and gives shout outs and shows appreciation, right? All you have to do is say thank you and your people feel seen, heard, valued, respected, and appreciated. So the good news that we have in our favor is that it really is, it's pretty simple. I think you just have to be intentional with connection. There are simple techniques that you can use to engage with your people more. And if you do those, then that will drive financial performance. You will have an increase in sales at the end of the day. So I'm trying to think. The 5 dysfunctions of teams starts with a pyramid. And who's the author of the 5 dysfunctions of teams? The name is escaping me right now. In any case, there's a pyramid. And he says that trust is the beginning in order to get high performance. And I'm dispelling that and saying you don't, as a human, automatically trust people unless you know their story. Connection is the foundation. Once you've built connection, like when I hopped on the call with y'all today, you two, I'm not exaggerating. You're 2 of my favorite people. Why? Because I've spent time with you all. I know your stories. We've talked on the phone. We've been at conferences together. We've broken bread together. I know you. Therefore, I trust you. So you've got to build that connection first, which then enables us as humans to trust, which then enables us to be productive and to be innovative, which drives that top of the pyramid, which is financial performance.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. So good.
I love that.
Well, thank you.
We just have a minute or so left, Michelle. I do have one quick question. I love the concept of seismic shift. And your first book was Seismic Shift in Leadership. Now this one is Seismic Shift in You. When you think about it, the Earth science days go way back, but the seismic shifts sometimes happen in the middle of an earthquake, but a lot of times they happen under the surface and we don't even know they're happening. And I compared that to the 16 cigarettes a day. Connection is something where there could be ruptures that we don't realize until we've spent some amount of time without it. but we don't need to wait until we're sick to realize it. How do you correlate those things with your own work in the books?
Oh, Mark, that's a beautiful insight you just shared, and thank you for that. Yeah, what I call it is quiet disconnection. Is leaders, if you're tuning in, business owners, if you're tuning into this podcast and you have seen that people show up with their cameras off, you've seen that the engagement scores in your company or in your division are not going up, they're just stagnant. You're seeing that people are showing up, but they're just not fully participating. That is what I'm terming quiet disconnection. And as Mark just referred, you should be scared, because if there's quiet disconnection, that means that stuff is simmering below and they're not happy and they're not motivated and they're just showing up and doing the bare minimum. And that's when you lose that morale, that motivation, and you're not going to get the financial performance. So if you just can shift a couple of things in your daily rhythm, like showing up and before you begin with the agenda, you focus on connection over task, right? Of having one-on-one meetings where you say, before we talk about your goals, I want to know, how are you doing really? Just going a little bit deeper, making sure that on your team calls, you celebrate wins, that you focus on the who and on the people. Then if your people feel seen, heard, valued, respected, and appreciated, they will walk through fire for you, right? They will climb that mountain for you if they believe you care about them. So quiet disconnection is everywhere. If you're seeing it, just know, as Mark Nation just referred to, there's probably even more simmering underneath, and address it now and go deeper with connection, because you will get the financial benefit.
Dr. Michelle Johnston, thank you. Guys, if you're watching this, check her out. Check out her books and her site. I know she invites people to come. I mean, I know she speaks. She'll come to your event and give a talk like any other. But here we got to close out. We've got 3 questions, 1 methodology, real results here on the Global Gurus podcast. That's what we explore in every episode. And Mark, it's been great to be with you again, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for having me, you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.